Okay, so this is for the session organizational structure and SDLC. There's more to it. I just found that these two are describes the main idea of this today's lesson. But what you're about to learn is what do you have to do on a daily basis? How do you blend into the corporate culture of this industry, and which comes from many years of experience, and it has to be embedded in you in a way when you talk to an interviewer. It's like this is nothing. It's very simple. You shouldn't panic on these things. But before
Mhm.
we get started, let's look back from last week. We talked about two different positions here. One is QA analyst, and the other is automation engineer. Can any of you tell me what's the difference?
QA analyst is just manual testing, so you don't have to actually write code in the automation software.
Correct.
You're going, like one by one, manually checking every little thing, whatever you got to check. Automation engineer is depending on whatever platform you're using, like a Selenium or something like that. You're writing code to test things for you, and it's like a pseudo person logging into a website to test if things work, and it'll pop up as error messages or pass messages depending on if it worked or not. But you still got to go through and see that maybe your code was wrong and it passed, but it shouldn't have passed, but all that kind of stuff.
Yes, correct. Excellent. Um, Next question is, are they very different, or do they in some ways do the same thing?
In some ways, they do the same thing, right? It's just one is a little bit a step further and they can handle more and do more, but it's still quality assurance.
Correct. Automation engineers actually they do the everything that QA analyst would do,
Okay.
except for the fact that the QA analyst may be testing the entire website manually,
Mhm.
but automation engineer is not going to be testing the entire website manually. They would be probably helping out the QA analyst, maybe touch one or two things here and there that has not been automated to help them out. I know there are folks that don't even manually test for the testing's sake, but they will do some sort of exploratory testing with the website to figure out whether it's automatable and how do I automate it. And as this person is automating the step, we'll be interacting manually with that. And when the automation fails, the automation engineer will go back to the website and look at it and see, did it fail because the automation test code was bad, or did it fail because there is really a bug inside the website? Okay, so
Okay. Hmm.
so those are the differences, and as you can see, the salaries also differ quite a bit. Um, any questions here?
No, nothing so far.
All right, moving on to the next thing. So, where do you actually fit in? Let's take a look at it from the very top. All right, so the very top we have is chief executive officer or CEO and or chairman. Sometimes they're combined together, and they may be also called the president of the company. Different titles, but essentially they do the same thing. They
Okay.
oversee the entire process of the company, and they are the top decision makers here in the company. Now, under that, there are a bunch of executives. So I only posted two. Uh, One would be, let's say, the IT director, and the other is product development director. And there could be, I mean, tens and 20 different directors looking and overseeing different departments. Like, for example, finance, there could be a director for that. There could
Mhm.
be a director for collections, um, and networking, and business operations, and so forth. Now, ours, we fall under typically the IT director. Now, I'm saying director, but this could be vice president of information technology. Okay. however way different companies like to title that, it all depends on the company. So,
Okay.
but essentially they're the same thing. So don't take it as, okay, is there an IT director in your company? Well, that could be a different title, but same guy, do the same thing. So, and the product development.
Okay.
Product development, I put it here because this guy and this guy may work close enough. The product development executive individual is going to have a lot of say on how this software should come out. That's the product. Software is a product for the company that you're going to provide to your clients. And therefore, the design and the needs will probably initiate from the product development director. Okay. Now,
Okay.
with that information, you as an IT director, you have a team of people that you're gonna make those happen. Okay, you're gonna build that product. So, IT director will be taking input from the product development and build that. Underneath the IT director, they may have multiple project managers. So you can have a project manager here, you can have a project manager here, or maybe just one project manager, and that's enough. Now, this project manager may not have a title of project manager. It may be director of software engineering, which is in our company. We have.
Mm,
We have a vice president of software engineering and a director of software engineering, and he acts as a project manager. So just keep that in mind. But standard in technology field, they call it the project manager. And if it's a director and there's nobody else titled project manager, you can pretty much understand that this guy, whoever is the director, on top of the folks that are working out, teams that are working and building things, is going to be or take the responsibility of the project manager role. Questions so far?
okay. No.
Now, under each project manager, there's going to be one or more teams. And these teams are going to actually do things. Now, they break them down into teams if there are different kinds of work. Um, can you explain to me from previous class? How about Haley? What's the difference between front end and back end development?
Isn't the front end what people see and interact with, and the back end is all the other stuff that like people don't see, like the software and things like that?
Correct.
Or-
You want
Okay.
to mention the front end, perfect. Back end, you do want to mention two things. One
Okay.
is the database,
Okay. Database.
and you can talk about, remember that file server, mail server,
Mhm.
Google Photo server. So you
Okay.
can say that there are servers in the back end that communicate information back and forth, and it could be file server, it could be photo server, it could be mail servers, and each server functions different things. And also you have one centralized database where sensitive data is stored for the customer, and those are back-end stuff. Now, when
Okay.
you are developing something, you may have something in the front end, like let's say you're looking at this PowerPoint presentation, that's front end.
Mm-hmm.
But you see how, are you able to see my little dot moving around?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, this is my first time using this. This dot moving around, you seeing from my computer, actually this is going through the back end of a GoToMeeting server, and they're taking input from me and processing it and sending it out to you. So there must be something in that server of GoToMeeting that's using this thing and passing that data back to the front end, which you are seeing. So
Mm.
each project may have a front end and a back end, actually will have a front end and a back end work related to it. sometimes they are all done in one team.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they will break it down into two teams. So one team is only going to work on the front end design, how users will interact, and the back end is going to be another. Now, when do they do that? Well, when there are a whole lot of members in the team, when it's a big project, there's probably 10, 15 people in each team. And that's why they don't want to bring in 20 people in one team. It becomes too much for people to.
Mhm.
Smaller teams, easy interaction, better to handle, and work gets done better. Bigger teams, it's really hard to keep track of who's doing what, and therefore the work may get lost, people may get opinionated, and controlling the members of the team might get difficult for the project manager. Make sense?
Got it.
Mhm.
Now, let's take a look at a team. Inside a team is where you're going to stay. They're going to assign you a team, and typically they will give a cool little name for it. Like we had pod 1, pod 2, maybe some high-tech stuff, names and stuff. So acronyms, BAU, for example, business as usual team, whatever, whatnot, doesn't really matter. So you'll be assigned in a team to work for a company. And who's going to be in your team? You need to know this. There will be some interviewers who will ask you, try to be a little show-offy with you, and really amateur questions, but they do ask because a bunch of amateurs are actually doing this job. And and this industry became so weird, you can't really get this training in universities anymore. Not a comprehensive one, it's bits and pieces. And then they're gonna have to train you 6 months for you to get to this level. So it's hard. Most people come out of universities, they go entry level and they get the training, so they don't know anything. Anyway, so you're gonna have somebody for sure called business analyst.
Okay.
I did not say one or two product owners. You may or may not have a product owner in your company, but do know what this means. This person means he is the person who is going to tell you how the software is going to look like. What is it supposed to do when you click on this button? Business analyst is supposed to take that information from the product owner and write it down and also break it down into small workable pieces. Okay, what do I mean by that? Let's go to Priceline.com. So let's say Priceline get this out of here. Priceline.com has these modules here: hotel, flights, bundle plus save, and cars. And let's say they didn't have anything called cruises. But Priceline wanted, now the product manager comes to your team and says, hey, you know what? We never done cruises, but we got some good connections with cruise folks, agents, whatnot. We're going to add a tab called cruises. And in this, first of all, the business analyst is now thinking immediately is, I got to have a tab. So I'm going to have to write up that users should be able to see a tab called cruises. All right. And this work might be broken into two pieces. One, for the front end guy, the business analyst might write a work order saying, go ahead and put this cruises on this website. Okay. And the back end guy is going to work on whoever clicks on this cruises, it should go to the server and return back this page.
Mhm.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
Mhm.
So the business analyst is going to break down those work. Now there's a job for business analysts as well, and when you finish the QA analyst uh, uh, trainings with me, you can actually, if you can communicate well, which you can, you can actually work as a business analyst as well. You don't have to write any codes, but you do need to understand this basic concept of technology, how the software is being developed, and how do you break down the work to smaller pieces for the developers to work on? Okay, so they are like the cater for um, the the software developers. So
Mm.
this person is going to take all that information from the product owner and write down things and break down things. And sometimes this person may not know enough to break down things. How am I going to break down? Um, if they had any technology experience, then like a coding experience, they would be really good at it. But generally, they don't. So what they do is they ask the developers. Okay. So in your team, you're gonna have must developers because they are the ones who build the stuff. Okay, they are the assembly line workers, if you want to call it. Don't take it lightly because they are the ones who get paid the most. so
Mm.
so they are going to build the stuff for you. Now, generally in a team, you may have 2 to 7 developers. If it's more than 7, they're going to break that team into 2 teams. If it's 2, 3, 4, it's fine. It should be okay. Depending on the need of the team, they may have those people in there. Now, the business analyst will probably consult with the developers that, hey, what do you think about this one? Is this need to be broken down farther, or is it okay? Can you tell me why the task needs to be broken down into smaller pieces? How does that help?
Well, I mean, it helps because it doesn't have to put it on one person, so you can get more done. So instead of one person can go from A to B, or sorry, A to Z, writing code from there to get everything situated, I can break up, give a quarter to this guy, quarter to that guy, quarter to this guy,
Yeah.
and have a few testers testing, 2 developers and the other one testing the other 2 developers, so it moves smoother, and then there won't be, maybe one person codes it a certain way or does it a certain way, and maybe there's errors in that way.
Right.
So it gives a little bit different approaches and see which one works the best. Maybe one guy is not as good as the other guy, so it could be accountability as well, I think.
Yeah. Well, Tony, you explained it very well. Correct. It's those smaller tasks are easier to attain. And have you ever had a situation when you had too many things to do and then you just freeze?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, goodness gracious, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
So this is something like that. This is complex. The work is very tough. It
Yeah.
a lot of brain to do things, and uh, it might be impossible sometimes for a person to finish the task if it is big and complex. There has been cases where halfway the developer may turn back and say, I don't know how to, I got a blocker. I don't know how to proceed any further. Or this code is not working. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work sometimes. And new updates are there and they may have to do things and nobody knows everything, like I said. So you don't know what's going to happen. That's why if you break it down into small pieces, then if somebody fails, hey, we still got other pieces are going and being built. And this particular
Yeah.
small piece that got stuck because somebody couldn't, it's not going to slow down everybody else or the project. We may be able to bring in some experts or give this person some extra time to research out. And they do that a lot. More of that is coming later. I'm just giving you a snapshot of what's going on.
Okay.
Any question about product owner, business analysts, developers?
No, not so far. Not for me.
Okay.
Anything for you? Yeah,
Uh,
we're good.
Now, you come in right here, 1 to 2 testers. And whatever the developer is being built, you're going to be testing, but there's more to it. Um, does that mean if the developers are they started working and it's going to take them a week to build something, does that mean that you're not working that week?
No.
Right. You are going to be working and doing things, and that comes in later on one of the slides. I'll explain what you're going to be doing. Any question about the organizational structure overall so
Yeah,
far?
overall, we're pretty good.
Okay. Now, the other thing is you may have a QA manager
Okay.
or you may not. And everybody in here is going to report to the project manager. You may have every 2 weeks a one-on-one session with the project manager, and they may evaluate you or ask you how are things going. Generally, it's very nice. So my company, initially, my boss was like getting me for, well, you took last Friday off, you're sick, and then before that you took Friday off. You know how that looks in front of the company executive team. That was my first 3-4 weeks of working for this company.
Mm,
I was actually like just got the job and I was dying and learning things on the spot and getting really like nervous and sick actually. And genuinely I was getting sick. So I was taking those days off and he was really not trusting me. He never saw me before first month. So he's very skeptical. Um, and it was nerve-wracking time. That was my one-on-one. But my answer to him was he was kind of interrogating me, and my answer to him was, Mo, I think you just know me for several weeks, and you're looking at a couple of days off I took, maybe back to back coincidence on Fridays, and you're thinking I'm trying to extend my weekend, but I'm just not going to say anything right now. Wait till you see me for 6 months, and I think you're going to change your concept about me. That was my answer to him.
uh-huh.
And 3 months later, everything changed. I'll tell you more about how things got changed, but briefly, now he meets with me and he asks me, are you happy with this job? Is there anybody bothering you? How are the people working that you're managing? Uh, are they doing their job? What can I do to make your job good? I said, I need more money and a promotion. So he said, yes, I was going to. You were first on the line for me, but COVID-19, now everything is kind of standstill. So he said,
Uh-huh.
as soon as things get better, I'm going to go for that to the executive team. It's going to happen. So no worries. So you can get to that point where your evaluation is, you are so good. You are doing so much for the company. It's not even going to be about evaluation. It's going to be about, oh my God, I need this person. What can I do to help this person? That's how it's going to be more like the one-on-ones. And that's when you know that you have done things right. And I want you to be to get to that level. Anyway, so you may have a QA lead. If you have a QA lead or a QA manager, you're going to have to report to this person. So that's going to be your immediate manager. If you don't have one, you may be reporting directly with the project manager, with every other QAs. You may be a junior QA, somebody may be a senior QA, but you don't have a manager per se. Okay?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
In my company, the product owner, we don't have one, and it's actually the director of product development himself is the product owner for our teams. We have once a month meeting with the director of product development, and this person tells us how these things these products should be. We demo it to this person, and guess what? This person doesn't always know the answer, and we may have a better solution. We take a sample of the software to this guy, and we demo it to this guy, and then he's like, I like this one better. Or, hey, initially I thought this, but can we even do this one? And in that meeting, we may have a business analyst and maybe a developer, maybe even a tester or not a tester, but the developer might say, yeah, we could even do that one. And he might say, I like that better. Let's go and do that. And then this team comes back again, and then there goes another development. Okay. That's the beauty of it, because people change, things are getting better, newer, faster, nicer, and that means that this job is not temporary. It's not when Priceline got their cruises built and you're done. Nope. Even when this is built, somebody is going to come and say, hey, let's change it this way because that's going to be better. And guess what? There comes your work and your job security. And you're going to be continuing to work. Make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. Moving on. SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. And this is the fundamental concept of software development industry. And you need to know this by heart, and you have to memorize this or whatever you have to do. And they may ask you questions on this, but even if they don't, you should know this. There are steps, like how do I build the software? There should be a standardized ways of procedures to follow for the department to build a software. Software industry has been there for over 50 years now, and they have been evolving, and they have gotten to where they want to say that they are perfect. Okay? And you need to know what is that perfect step, or how do I be a part of a team and make myself perfect for everybody, and everybody's perfect within the team, and we build products really fast and efficient way. And this is where the fundamental steps come in. The very first step in this process is called planning. And again, software development life cycle, it's a cycle. What it's talking about is how is the software developed from a baby all the way to grown up. And that's the life cycle we're talking about here. So the very first thing is planning. What does that mean? So let's go back to Priceline. Somebody wants this cruises tab here, and that wasn't there before. And for them to develop this, they have to first plan out. And the questions are going to be asked is, what are we going to develop? Who is going to be accessing it? How are they going to access it? Those kinds of questions are needed to be answered to get a clear perspective of what are they going to build. A restaurant website, for example, I don't know, Chili's. So if they want to build this application and say Chili's now is gonna say it's gonna have a join now or log in for some sort of rewards. Every time you spend money, it's gonna count it. It's gonna have an ID for. You don't have to carry your membership card. You can have your phone number entered. Those things are softwares that are getting highly popular these days with various companies. And let's say if you want to build that, how are you going to build that? How is it going to work? All of that part is called planning. Okay. And you can read more about it. I have more information here. But really, what you need to know is sometimes the interviewer will ask you, what are the steps of SDLC. And so
Okay.
you are going to need to memorize these steps for sure, the planning. And then second is analysis. So
Okay.
once you planned out, now you need to focus on, okay, this is what we need. And what are the pieces, bits and pieces of those things that we're going to need? Planning is very general. It's like, how long is it going to take? How many people is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? And when will this product be ready? That's the kind of answer that you need to have in the planning phase. And this planning could be a team of product development and software project manager, whatever, whatnot, whoever thinks can provide good input in this. You may also have a business analyst who can map out that we're going to break down these work into these smaller pieces, and it's going to take this long for us to get it done. So all of those inputs are placed into the planning phase, and then a decision is made whether we want to do this, or anything can go wrong in that planning, and the deal may not come through. For example, Chili's may want a software done with your company and their membership program, and with the timing and the cost that you offered, they may not agree to that, and they may want to find somebody else. Okay, so that's that preliminary thing. Once you got a deal that it's good to go, done deal, then you move to the phase called analysis. And in
Okay.
analysis, this is where you want to chunk things out. You want to break it into smaller, not particularly in smaller uh, smaller pieces of code writing, but more like months. How many months? Can we break it down into months or even 2 weeks? And how many 2 weeks or half a month that we're going to need? And can we allocate those work into those little chunks so that we can finish in, say, 6 months? This is where a nitty-gritty, heavy duty, detailed information is going to be obtained from either the product owner or even the client, like Chili's, people from Chili's. We may be asking them, hey, how do we do this? Or how do you want this? Or what color do you want on this pop-up screen? And so forth. Um, how do you want this to be managed? Do you want the customers to be able to see their points and when they're going to get a free lunch? All of those questions are going to be answered in this analysis phase, and they're going to be written down in a document. About the document is my next slide, so we'll get to that in a little bit. So, any questions about planning and analysis?
No, we're good so far.
Okay.
You good?
Mhm.
We're good.
Analysis can also be called requirement gathering. Okay, this is like
Requirement.
requirement gathering. They may ask you tricky question like, when would you be actually gather requirements? You're gonna say that it's gonna be in analysis step or analysis phase.
Okay.
I might ask you questions on this as well. So this particular slide, it is worth looking at it many times, coming back, seeing it, and read these things that are on the side of it. Plus, I'll give you some notes to memorize later down the line. Next step is, once you've done analyzing and mapping things out, you may or may not have this design phase. Sometimes the design and analysis is all in one, but I like to break it down in case an interviewer wants you to spell it out, or maybe this guy who's interviewing you, he learned it this way. So now, just the word says design. This is where you're going to actually go into, okay, what kind of button do you want? Do you want a radio button? Do you want a push button? Do you want a slider bar? And what color do you want? So all of these designs, like these buttons and this pop-up, how big, and do you want a logo to appear? That's very nitty gritty. Okay, do you want a calendar to pop up or just a list of months like that? I'm sure you've seen where you click on it and just you see a calendar and you can click on the calendar. So those are kinds of design things. And based on those design, the developer knows what kind of code to use. And more often, they don't write codes. The codes are already written online and they would copy that snippet and fill in their filler into the code. And it's actually that easy when you get to that level and still make $100,000. So, questions about design?
No.
All right. Next is now we have design, and at this step already everything is broken down. If somebody says, I need a button that's going to say join in, that button is going to have a front end work. Somebody's going to be working on that front end, and there'll be a back end work of saying, once you say join in, go to the server and get this page for this customer displayed that's going to have a form for typing in name, email, phone number, and so forth, and username and password. And then there might be another button on that page that says submit. And for that button, there might be another work order for somebody to design that button. And then a backend guy, he's going to be designing once this customer hits submit, and then my code is going to take that data, go into the database, put it in a secure row, and not let anybody delete it. And then come back with a message saying, success. You are welcome. Okay. You're now a member of Chili's, for example. So all of those pieces are all at this stage, it gotten written. And build state is now where developers are pulling one of those work and actually working on it. Now, how are they going to pull the work? How is it going to prioritize? Meaning, what gets done first, what gets done last? That's yet to come in the next few slides. Okay. But at this phase, there's a lot going on here as well. They're starting working on it, and the things are getting done. It's being built. The code is being written, and once the code is done, take a guess. What's needed?
Once code is done, testing.
Test it, correct. So the testing comes next, and this doesn't it. So do you think that all this time, this planning, analysis, design, and build, the tester was doing nothing? What do you think?
No, they got to be doing something. So they probably have some secondary duties, I'm assuming.
Want to take a guess? Like, what do you think they could be doing in the analysis phase, or planning phase, or design phase, or build phase?
So they're probably writing their own code, or at least planning out what kind of code they're going to write to test it. Because as they're, planning and designing and trying to build all this code, the tester has his own idea of like, okay, what he's got to be testing, how he's got to be testing it, because not every website or whatever small little thing that this, team is doing for Chili's or whoever the client is not going to be always the same. So that way you can get a base idea and get some sort of, base code going. And that way you can just plug in the specifics for whatever he's having to test in that immediate whenever it gets down to him. So he's not starting from zero.
Exactly. Correct. And there's more to it. So we'll discuss that in the next few slides. You got a little warmer there. Awesome. But anyway, even though testing is written down here, they look like one comes after the other. Sometimes they're happening at the same time in different ways. And that's also to come. But for us to understand things, in a sequence. If they ask you, just say it that this is the sequential way. But anyway, at this testing phase is where now you need to test the development, whatever the developer created. You as a tester, you're gonna have to give this developer a feedback. You have to tell the developer,
Okay.
this is good to go. You are the one who is going to sign off on it, on that piece of work, and they're gonna wait for you to sign off on it. If you say no, it's not done, and there's a bug there, or this should not be this way, then that work goes back to the developer and he would have to fix it before it will move on. And if you approve the work, then the next thing is it's going to be given to the customer. So that's called deployment or deploy.
Okay.
This word is used in software a lot. So just memorize it. And now when you're going to deploy the code, it's all done, tested, deployed to the customer will be able to see it. Chili's clients will be able to see that pop-up screen saying join now, earn points. And now you have launched it or deployed it or deployment process. So all of that happens there. And
Okay.
once it's been deployed, what you have is maintenance. Meaning sometimes you may need a tweak here and there. The customer, Chili's might come back and say, hey, you did a good job in building this, but can we have one more feature in it? And guess what? There you go again. And you're now going back to the planning, coming back to it. And at the same time, you are also testing what you already built. With me on that?
Uh-huh.
Because you are just about to add something new to something already built, you are maintaining the testing on it. You have to. Why?
Because you're going to try to add another feature. So if you don't have the base already set and is working, if you add this new feature, that could screw it up. Or say you wasn't right from the beginning, you add this other feature, it's going to be even more messed up. So whenever, say you deploy without having to test it,
Yeah.
or without maintaining it, or something went wrong in whatever step, and then the user clicks something and it just crashes on them all the time. So then you got an issue. So you got to keep on going back and testing and maintaining to make sure that it's all smooth.
Exactly, because the data in the back end is going to be using the new feature is going to use the same data that was in the back end. So if I develop this new feature and I'm not careful in checking whether my old feature is still working properly, that my new feature, when I'm changing some database code, that I didn't mess up my first code that was already built, if I'm not checking that, that could be a disaster. And it has happened a lot. And it still happens when they don't have adequate testing and maintenance on that code. So there's always going to be a job of software developers and testers to continue maintaining whatever they have built and providing that support for the clients that they serve. And it's an ongoing process. It never really stops. Questions?
Nope, we're good so far.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Can we take an hour break and come back at 12?
Sure, sounds good to me.
Okay, then I'll pause the video and come back and see you at 12 o'clock.
Okay, all right, we'll see you at 12.
Thanks.
We brought the there, Marlene.
Any questions on the SDLC process?
Mm-mm.
No,
I think we're pretty good.
yeah, we got it pretty good. Because after when we took that break, when we got off, we were just talking to each other about it, just going back over it. So, we're okay for now.
Mhm.
That's awesome. And you may need to come back and forth on this several times to brush up. I will ask you periodically in different sessions. I will spiral back to see if you remember. So
Okay.
that will give you a bit of a chance to go back again Don't worry about it too much.
Okay.
All right. Not so much of a homework yet, other than just concepts. But later on, when we get into more technical things, I'm gonna give you homework. So you have things that you need to do during the weekdays, especially for Java classes. You're gonna have an application to build with starting with the small, then bigger, and those may take some hours from you, and that weekdays time is gonna come in handy for you to do those and submit. Anyway,
Okay. Sounds good.
cool. All right. So, well, somebody developed the nice little steps for SDLC. So the testers are like, well, why can't we have a life cycle for us? Well, so some not decided to go in and standardize some information. Now you have to remember this stuff as well. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, so just like SDLC, there is also something called STLC, which is software testing lifecycle. So this is where your world of stuff or steps or process or phases that you have to follow to get your work done. And the very first step to that is requirement analysis. Okay. And that's,
Okay.
you are doing this right at the moment when the larger team for SDLC is doing planning and analysis. Okay. You
Mhm.
are mapping out what feature is coming out, how is it going to look like. You're taking notes at this point, and you are deciding whether this is a test that I can automate, whether this cannot be automated. I don't know if I elaborated. Some things cannot be automated. Can you
Okay.
take a guess what it could be?
I'm really not for sure. I guess I had a misconception. I guess most things could have been automated.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah, can you show us what things that could not be automated
Right.
and what's fall under?
This image right here,
Uh,
don't panic right now. I'm going to show you some things just a little bit outside of today's class. But I'm not even seeing the image link, by the way, so some things are hidden. But anyway, what I wanted to show you is that this image right here, we don't really know whether this is the right image or not.
Okay.
And there's no way I can write a code to go that the code is gonna go in and see, the broccoli is displayed right here. and
Mm,
asparagus is right there, and there's French fries. So this is the right image. It's not possible.
okay. It can only analyze the fact that there is an image, just not what's in the image.
Correct. It's gonna be
Okay.
a file link, file to this image in the HTML document, which is coming in a couple of sessions later. I'm gonna show you how you're gonna build your own website. So don't worry, those days are coming. So
Okay.
for automation perspective, it's impossible for me to figure out whether the image was the right one. I know it's displaying some sort of image by looking at the engine behind this website. This is, by the way, the engine behind, and there's a whole class on how to manipulate these things, so it's coming. But just for
Okay.
now, that in here you have to go in kind of like a car. This is the outside of the car. This is the in under the hood, and you have to look under the hood
Got it.
to see what's being displayed. And this is where we're going to analyze what image it is, but we can't really tell by looking at under the hood. We have to see how it's displayed outside, and that only a human eye can analyze, and therefore this is something that cannot be tested. So if this was the page that you're being developed, and you're in that team. As they're planning this, you're probably writing down a note saying that, I'm gonna have a manual test case. Somebody has to actually come into this site physically and look at this image and see if this is the right one or not.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
Other things could
So
be
that's
graphs. Even these images, they have to be validated by somebody actually looking at it. But these buttons, these you can automate. You can automate this process of clicking learn more so that whether this page showed up or not. But again, somebody would need to come into this page and see if these images are the right ones or not. Yeah, you had a question, Tony.
no. So that was saying this. So that's the value in still having
A person.
a manual tester.
Correct. So
for things like this, because
correct. You have to have a manual tester no matter what. And companies would prefer that they get rid of all the manual testers and have only the automation engineers. And the engineers will periodically come in here and check just real quickly, but everything else is automated. They can do both with one person. Why would they need two people? But unfortunately, there's not enough automation engineers out there, and they have to pay more. So therefore, and automation engineers are very lazy. They don't like to do these manual testing, so they like to have somebody who doesn't know coding will be just doing that for them. And you know, so that's why there's both jobs, both types of jobs available. But I mean, manual testing jobs are not readily available because people get these jobs and they don't like to leave the jobs. It's a really awesome job for what they do and how much money they make. And because companies are trying to minimize manual testers and get the automation engineers, there's a high demand for automation engineers and there's a low supply. Therefore, job is pretty much guaranteed. Going back in here, so we got the requirement analysis phase where you're gathering all that information. You are preliminary writing down how you're gonna test those things. You're gathering more information in this step. Okay. This is where another something come in. It's called RTM. It stands for Requirement Traceability Matrix. This is a document where you can create this doc and you can map out what are you going to test. I'll show you a sample of this a little bit later, but let's move on.
What does RTM stand for again?
Requirement Traceability Matrix. And I have a whole slide for this. So
okay, got it.
More informed. Next phase is test planning. This is where you're going to plan out your test cases and how long it's going to take for you to write the test cases. Are there some resources you need if you need some sort of training on some things? If a new software is coming in, they may have a demo for you, and you may have to go in there and they will show you, walk you through what those things do. So you're doing all that there. Once you have pretty good idea of what the requirement is and you've done your planning and you are in the know-how of how things are supposed to operate, this is where you come in to develop the test. And test development for manual tester is just writing out the steps to test it. These are called test cases. Okay. Or test data, what kind of data you need, test environment and test scripts. Environments, more on that later. Test cases, that's going to be next week. I'm going to show you how to write this. And how to manage those test cases. So all of that is coming next week. This is huge. right here. And this is where you're going to be putting your most of the manual testing efforts and organization in here. I'll show you how to do that. And once you have written down your test steps, and just vaguely right now, a test step could be something like this. Suppose you're supposed to test this find a location, this feature. And what it does is if you click on it, it takes you to the search box and you could type in your zip code and hit enter. It's going to give you a suggestion. You pick up a right suggestion and it's going to give you a map and you're supposed to validate this map and these data is correct. And you're going to be given a list of these addresses already and that would be your test data. Somebody's going to tell you that, hey, I got this list of locations. And when you get to this page, when you put this zip code, you're supposed to see these and you're supposed to make sure that they show up in the right place of the map. Right? Now, to go a little bit farther, what you might do, this A right here, whether this is showing up in the right place or not, you could go to A and take this and open up a different browser and go to Google Maps and type in that address and see if the locations match.
Okay.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, if you see this A is appearing somewhere way over here, you know there is some sort of connection issue from front end here, this info, to the backend server. And the back developer probably did something wrong. There's a bug there that this A is not supposed to. It's supposed to show up here. Understand? So these steps, these are some steps that you have to write it down. Why write it down? Because what if it's not you, and what if it's somebody else testing later on? If you don't write it down, when you're, let's say you have a day off and somebody needs to test this because they just added this part right here and they need to test, make sure that nobody broke this feature. So if you write it down, whoever is working that day can take on your caseload of what you wrote down and follow the steps. So you're probably asking, how am I going to write it down? That's the whole class next weekend, is how we're going to write down.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, I mean, it's going to sound like this. When I click on find a location, then find Chili's restaurant near you page should display. When I, or you can say when user types in a zip code and clicks search, then a Google Map page should display. And Google Maps should display the address accurately.
And from 10, step 1, go to manage maps page. A window will appear that contains all map that you created.
Hey Google.
2.
Stop.
3, with the short code of the map on page.
Give me 1 second. For some reason our Google Home triggered.
Oh, I
saying a bunch of random stuff.
They're always over Google Assistant. Time is up.
Just all right. Okay, we're good now. Sorry, that's random. They're always.
So understood?
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a whole system of writing these steps. But your steps has to be clear enough that anybody can read those steps and be able to mimic or do the testing needed for these.
Yeah.
So that's next weekend. Let's go back in here. And once you've done writing test cases, when you are actually testing and using those test cases to test those features, that's the test execution phase. This step can also be more like you have automation built in. And that's building automation is going to be your test development phase if you're a test automation engineer. The manual tester is going to
Okay.
write up the test case, and you are going to take that written test case and create automation on it. And that's test development for automation engineer. When you have developed the test case and you kick off the test case to run it automatically, like I showed you on one of the examples, real life, that's called test execution. And in test execution, all you're doing is kicking off the test case. Or for manual tester, he is actually testing the website based on those steps and reporting back whether it's a pass or a fail. And how they report whatnot, that's also details is going to be covered in next week class.
Okay.
There are several types of tests. I don't want to go deeper. It's they're called smoke test, systems test, functional testing, integration testing, ad hoc testing, black box testing, white box testing, you name it. I mean, there's like a ton. And they have certain meaning behind these testing category, and there will be interview questions on what are these kinds of testing, or they will ask you what are some of the types of testing that you have done. You have to describe that. It's a must. The question will be there in the interview. So next weekend, I will elaborate on all of that. There'll be questions on how to write a test case. What is a test case? What are the steps in the test case? What are the what do you put? What comes first? What comes last? All of that will be there in questions. And test closure is basically you're done with testing and you got your report submitted to whoever needed, and just provide a report to somebody saying that everything is good to go, or no, we found bug. And if you found bugs, then that's gonna go back into the developer, and developer is gonna work on that, repair, and it's gonna come back to this right here, test development again. And you may have to change a few things. If not, then you come back in here and you execute your test case again. Once they fixed it, you execute, and then you report again. And if everything is good, let it go. If you found still issues, it comes back again in here. If they say no, we this is too much, we're gonna change the whole feature because there's issues with this feature. Then they might change the whole feature, and you may have to go back to requirement analysis again and figure out, okay, what feature then is it gonna replace this existing one, because the existing one has issues. Then you have to do all that again. You have to do the test planning for that new feature. Maybe the button is not working. They want to have a slider bar, like the Wish.com has it. Or do you want to purchase? Slide this bar. So now you have to design requirement planning, develop a different test case for a slider bar instead of a submit or buy now button. And then execute that test case again, and then see if there's a bug and report, and then let it go, or come back at any one of these levels. Okay. So even though they're set up in a sequence, you can see that you can jump back and forth, and whatever you need to do is what you have to do, and you be the judge of it. But interview questions would be, what are the steps? And you don't want to say test execution first and then say test requirements. That's not going to sound nice. You're going to say SDLC consists of several steps, including requirement analysis, test planning, test development, test execution, and test closure. Did you want me to describe each steps for you? You see how I answered that?
Yeah.
You don't want to bore the interviewer. You want to give a little bit of a brief information and then ask to see if they want you to go farther. Sometimes, if you don't do that, if you just go and say, well, requirement analysis is when you're gathering information, and at this phase you are creating an RTM. You're deciding whether the test case can be automated or not. How long is it going to take you? Test planning is where you're going to map out the time frame and what resources needed and so forth. You may see that the interviewer is getting bored or so, and they have more questions to ask. So you don't want to go into detail until they want you to. So always have a follow-up question. Did you want me to go into details of these steps? And in most cases they're gonna say no, because how you answered first, and then the fact that you are so confident and you asked them back, did you want me to go into details, already told him that you are pretty good at it. They don't need to test you on. Make sense?
Yeah, got it.
That's the beauty of it. All right. Questions?
No,
Nothing so far.
that was pretty clear. Thank you.
All right, welcome. Let's move on to the next step. So, how is SDLC and FPLC put together? It's kind of briefly I went over, but let's look at it. When we have the planning phase or requirement gathering phase of SDLC, they are your product development manager, your project manager, business analyst. They are talking to the clients and gathering information of what is the customer need and what kind of software needs to be built. You are in the know-how at the time, and you need to review what they have, their documents, if they have a document of what they want, or even like have a meeting. They will explain it to you that, hey, we're going to come up with this project, and you're going to be involved in the project. So this is what it's coming. They may talk about how long, whatnot. So you're going to be attending meetings. So that's what's going to be your workload for when the company is in the requirement gathering or planning phase of SDLC. So you're not going to be sitting down drinking coffee. When the deal is done and now they want to start working on it, it's going to be design phase, and you are going to be involved in the design phase in SDLC. At that time, you are listening and not really adding a lot of feedback, because you're the last person they want to take feedback from. And you're going to see a lot of folks in that meeting. They want to show off, and they want to show that they're powerful. And QA tester is like, they're going to put them at the very last. Not everybody, but you might see some folks that will probably not want to take your input much, but you are silently listening to what the design is, and you are taking notes. You are taking notes on how you're gonna test that feature. Are there some features that needs to be manually tested? Are there features that can be automated? Where are you gonna organize those test cases? What's gonna be priority? Which ones needs to be tested first? Which ones needs to be tested later? And when do you test everything, and when do you just test some of it? You're doing that design. So at this phase, you are also attending meetings. You are still not doing anything else like coding and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. You may be part of two teams, and one team already developed, and you're writing an automation code, while the other team, you are in the design phase and you are writing manual test cases. Okay?
Okay.
So in the morning, you attended a team that's in the design phase, and the half the day, for that particular team, you come back to your desk and you are designing you're thinking about how you're going to do those testing. And in the afternoon, the next 4 hours, you are back to the other team who has developed something, and you're automating test cases for that team. Next, when the developers are developing, they're writing the code, you are actually writing your test case. Okay? And you're writing down the steps. The feature is not ready for you to test yet because the code is still being built by the developer. You can't even see. For example, at that stage, you won't probably be able to see this map. You can go to the page, but this map is missing, or this list of data is missing. But they just added the page, let's say. Okay?
Got it.
All right. So what are you going to do? You can't really test this whole thing. So you're like, I'm just going to write down the steps because it's coming and I need to test it, or my team needs to test it. I don't care who tests it. I'll write down the steps. Whoever responsible on that day, they will be testing it, period. So you standardize those steps, write it down, put it in a place, which is coming. I'll show you how to. And then somebody else take on the caseload and test it for you. Okay. The testing phase of SDLC is the same as the testing phase of STLC. You are actually testing. This is you, but that doesn't mean when you are testing, the developer doesn't have anything to do. Why not?
When you're developer always has, whenever you're testing, he's gonna go move on and go to his next subset, or at least he's gonna go through his own process. He's gonna do his own SDLC as far as what he's gonna do for his next step. So whenever he gets that step to okay, then he got to go and submit that to the tester for whatever that is. He's already got a leg up instead of just sitting there and doing nothing.
Correct. So he has a stack of things that he needs to develop. So he just developed one piece, which is probably just displaying this page.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now your part is to come into this test case that you wrote. Your test case goes all the way to test this map, but it's not built yet. But guess what? The developer just added this page. You need to come into this page and make sure this page is visible. At least this title is visible. And that's your testing for that little feature. And while you're testing this, developer is working on this list right here. And when he's going to be done with this, he's going to send it to you. You're going to come back in here. And while you're testing these list of data showing up, he's actually working on how to display this Google map in here. Questions?
No, got it.
Okay. Once you have tested, two things can happen. One, it's good and no bugs, no problem. Then you pass it, approve it. You send off the code to DevOps engineers. DevOps stands for development to operations. So these engineers look through when it's being developed, and they take the code and send it out to the customer, to the operations. That's why in short called dev and ops. More of that later. Okay. Those engineers will deploy that code to production. Production is when the customers actually got it and people will be able to start using it. That's called deployment. Okay. If you found a bug and you see that, I went here, he said that this page showed up, but it says Chili's restaurant, but it doesn't say Irving, Texas.
Well,
that's a bug. Because if you are supposed to put in your zip code and hit enter, for that city, it's supposed to say whichever city that is. So that was that initial code that they had to write. Not the map, but at least pick up on what city. So for example, Grapevine, what's the zip code there?
76051.
051. So if I do that, this is your test case that it's supposed to say Grapevine.
Mm-hmm.
Saying Grapevine. Okay, good to go. But when I put in Grapevine zip code and this says Irving, that's a bug. And
That's not good. Yeah.
that's not good. You don't approve it. You document it. There's a process to document the bug as well. All of that is coming. And
Okay.
you need to know how to, because they will ask you for it, and you'll be doing that on a daily basis. And when you report the bug, you actually create a work order. The bug reporting is nothing but you creating a work order for the developer. Or the work order the developer was working on to build that feature of this showing up, you can go into that same work order and say and put a comment saying, that didn't show up this way. I think there's a problem to it. And the developer can see the comment you made on it. More of that coming next few weekends.
Okay.
And the developer will take that ticket that he was working on from the testing, and he's going to take it back to in progress. He's going to change the status on that. Again, I don't want to go details because there's the whole day for that whole thing. But in a nutshell, when you write a bug report or you create a work order for the developer goes back to that same work that he did, and he's going to start working on it and leave everything else, fix that, and then send it back to you again and say, hey, is it working now? And you test it again.
Okay.
And if that works fine, you deploy it. Once the deployment is over, deployment is nothing but just kicking the code from the development environment where nobody could see the code, nobody could see the page, but now everybody can see the page. That's the difference. There's not much more to it. But once you're done with this, now what you do is maintenance. In maintenance, meaning you have developed that test case. You may even have the automated test case. That test case, you're going to continue running it automatically every day. Why? Because somebody is going to come in and put this details button here. Okay? They're going to add curbside pickup. They're going to have delivery option. And these things right now, I click on it, nothing happens. Okay? Nothing happens with buttons. But there's going to be something that you can click on this button. This is going to become a button, but it hasn't been done yet. They're working on it. You know that your team is working on it. If you don't continue testing this Grapevine thing, guess what? Tomorrow, a developer comes in and tries to put delivery button here. He goes into database and does some things. He doesn't know what the other developer did. There was a logic, there was a code there that was kicking off proper city. He messed it up. And he doesn't know he messed it up. And like I said, these developers they're not genius. They're not magicians. And these are complex code. One is connected to the other in a very complex logic, and they will mess it up. So what you do is you have automated a test case that comes in here and tests the city thing. You keep on testing it every day. Either they add a new code to make this delivery word clickable or not, you keep on running it. Because one day you will notice that as this developer was creating this button for delivery, all on a sudden, you got a test case failure where this restaurant zip code doesn't give you the right. and guess what? You caught a bug. And when you catch a bug, that's the greatest moment of a QA tester, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bring in value. If you didn't test it and they deploy this code, they can't just deploy this code. They will be deploying this broken code for this Grapevine, Texas as well, because it's written on the same paper, in the same file. Understand? So on that same file where they wrote the code for Grapevine is where this guy is making this delivery option button clickable. And he didn't think about the logic that the other developer put in here for zip code mapping and messed it up. And if you don't test that and you deploy this button, you are deploying that messed up code that's gonna break this city mapping with the zip code thing when the customer clicks on it. That's not gonna be good. And that's gonna cost a lot of money for the company. People are gonna turn around and not come back. They might drive to the wrong location and not find anything, and not trust this site. And we don't want that. And that's where you add value to the team, is when you find the bug. Okay? So that's your maintenance phase. Meaning, once you have developed a test case, even that feature is already done. You keep on testing that feature forever. And it never stops. And that means that you have job security. When the project is done, they still need you. You're still gonna have jobs. Questions about SDLC and STLC, how they fall in place?
Not really. Just gotta study up on it so we memorize them.
Yeah,
And,
it's so fresh.
correct. And kind of verbalize it, okay?
Okay.
You two, you should ask each other questions and answer to one another. And
Okay.
you keep talking and explaining these things, you're gonna get better. Trust me, sometimes you feel like, oh, I got this. It's easy. And then when I ask you a question, you're gonna be like, I couldn't articulate it as much as I thought I could.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And it won't happen until you actually verbalize these concepts and these words. So it's important that you do that. And I wasn't this good initially, and I'm still not good enough. But as I'm teaching this to you, I'm getting better. And an interview like this, I mean, I think the first interview I go to is gonna hire me. So because a lot of these folks, even my manager cannot even explain things. He has an accent when he talks, and he's Egyptian. He's not a good teacher. He knows a lot, but he cannot teach it to people. He was a horrible teacher teaching me stuff. And, I was lucky that I figured out myself and survived. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster for me. And the Tech Files Training Center that I learned this from, those guys were not very good either. I was watching a ton of YouTube videos trying to piece together the puzzles because they were not explaining things well, particularly in code writing phases. Anyway, so verbalization is important, but again, don't put yourself under pressure that, oh, I gotta be able to talk like Stein because otherwise I won't get the job. No, I mean, you're not going there to teach. Nobody's expecting you to be able to talk with this concept in a way that you're gonna be able to teach. They just want to see if you know and if you can get the job done. You don't need to teach anybody, so you don't need to be that expert. As long as you can somehow articulate the concept and just let your interviewer know that you know the concept, and then you can get the job done. That's all it matters. But hey, if you can explain it like a teacher, that's I mean, you got the job. There's no question about it. Anyway, these are some documents that are used during these phases, and formal stuff. Business analysts write these things, and everybody look at it. Now, it all depends on companies. Not all companies have the time to do all this and develop all this, and therefore they're probably very fast paced, and they don't want to spend too much time creating documents. They want to take some scratched notes and jump on it, like go build it. Let's make money. Let's not put too much. But if it's a government industry, like the Obamacare, for example, the marketplace application, the website, when it came out, do you remember that it crashed?
A lot, yeah.
Because it crashed because they didn't have good automation testers to test load testing, meaning create an automation framework that's going to go in and test 1 million people going into that website all at once. They didn't test it. They didn't know what the server was capable of. 1 second, please. Sorry about that.
You're good.
So those are some things that we need to look at. Now, in the government industries, they are so bureaucratic, and they have to document things and document how people are getting paid. They are very concerned about how they're writing things up. Okay. So you don't need to know much, but you just need to know, if they ask you, or if you ever get into a conversation of what is SRS, you need to know that it stands for Software Requirement Specification. Okay? So that you have to memorize. And you need to know what FRS is, Functional Requirement Specification. What is functional? And what is Software Requirement Specification? Let's look at this. So if this is a software application right here, and we go back one step. So this is a software application. You may look at it, oh, it's a website. I just type in zip code and I hit enter, that's it. No, that's a software. That's an application. It actually does something. There's code behind it that you don't see. You won't see the code if you even inspect it, because it's hidden, and it's in the server. It goes into the server, goes into the database. It calls Google sites and maps and a lot of things going on that even I don't know what. But anyway, this application, this is the software. So software requirement specification is the document where you would write down what is the requirement. What are the requirements? This is a formal document that large companies, government industries will first develop it before they handing it out to the software team to start working on it. And I'll show you how it looks like in a second. Now, functional, the other word is functional requirement specification. Gives me a there. Functional requirement specification is the same thing. It's just another word for it. What do they mean by functional? Functional comes from the word function, meaning it does something. When you put something, it does something, like an action. This word doesn't do anything. It's static. Find a Chili's restaurant near you. It's static. But this field is dynamic, or or it is functional, meaning you can do something, it has a function built in where it's going to give you a recommendation of what, and that's also coming from the server. Lightning speed, it went into the server, gave me this. And I would say, this is what I wanted. And then if I didn't even have to click on search, it gave me a different page. That is a function. It's doing some sort of action. So action is function. So functional requirement specification is where you're going to write down this function. It's going to say, what is it going to be written in that document? It's going to be written among hundreds of things that this website does. One of the things is going to say that users should be able to type in zip code in a search box and a list of suggestions would appear. That will be your one specification. Okay. The other sentence would be when user selects one of the suggestions like that, then a list of available Chili's locations would appear. That will be another specification. Another specification would be, along with the list, there would be a map displayed with those locations listed, and that will be a specification. And you would, as a business analyst, you're going to take that specification like, a list should display. Then you are going to talk to the developer and decide how you want to do it. Developers will tell you, well, we got the list, we can get the list from Google. Google will give us this list and we're going to just display it in a fancy way like this. We can even add these little things where we have curbside pickup. If that has it, we're going to add that to it. With me so far? Same thing, they can call it a business requirement specification. Okay, there is no difference at all. Different companies will say it in a different way. So BRS stands for business requirement specification. Interview question might be, in which SDLC phases, in which phase do you develop an SRS? What would you say?
So during planning and analysis?
Correct. Actually, planning is
okay.
To map out, and analysis is when you take that specification, meaning a list of Chili's location should display. Your analysis would be, how am I going to display? You're going to go into what color do I want to put in here? Do I want to put in these icons? Should there be an order button? All of those questions are going to be your analysis and design phases. But I mean, they can bleed into one another, and it's not going to hurt you. Nobody's going to pick on you on that. Okay. You can read about these. What it stands for, I mean, it kind of repeats the same thing. And where it says use cases always included, not that. I mean, you don't need to worry about that. Who develops it? System analyst develops the SRS. Actually, it can be anybody. It could be business analysts doing any one of these. The product development team could be doing that. Sometimes the customers will give you that. Like Chili's could come up with their own requirements in a document and give it to you and hand it over and say, can you tell me how long it's going to take you to build it and how much is it going to cost? And you look at those specifications already that's on there. Let me see if I have an example.
Okay.
But before I move away, just to confuse you a little bit more, sometimes you see instead of SRS, they're saying SRD. Want to take a wild guess what the D stands for?
Development,
Pretty close.
design,
Keep trying.
software, software development, and
The top word.
documentation. Okay.
So instead of software requirement specification, it's software requirement document.
Got it.
Or instead of functional requirement specification, it's functional requirement document, or FRD.
Got it.
Or BRD. But they're all the same thing.
Okay.
Here is a software requirement specification that you might receive. Before it used to be paper pencil.
Okay.
Now it has become electronic, so that it can be a file and be sent out to somebody. I don't know which company this is for. If I read it, I'll probably figure out. This is a sample software requirement specification from somewhere. Let's take a look at how it's designed. Notice that it's kind of like a book. This is like
Yeah.
a table of contents. And there's the purpose, the scope, the definitions. Who has time to do this? Reference, overview, specific requirements, and then they go deeper. Notice that they broke it down into functionality, usability, and based on the functionality, they have this cell configured to order products. I have no idea what this is. The system shall display all the products that can be configured. Could be like a software configuration sort of thing. The system shall allow user to select the product to configure. So these are called use cases. These are called use cases. Like how are they going to be used? Are they very detailed, or
Okay.
are they vague?
They're pretty vague, but it's pretty straight to the point.
Correct. It's straight to the point that you understand what they want, but it never told you how is that's going to look like.
Yeah.
It's completely going to be the design phase of how we want to design it.
Okay.
The system should allow user to select the product to configure. That means you could be like, in the design phase, we could have several products, and the customer can go in and click on the product that they want to configure. That could be just that. And the developer could build that. A business analyst could take that and talk to the developer and say, okay, how do I break down that little task? Developer might say that break it down into two. One would be front end, that I have display all these products. And then two is somebody who's going to be doing the back end. When somebody clicks on it, then that's going to be taking you to that configuration page. All of those things can happen, but you don't have to write this. You don't have to understand this 100%, because this is going to be the job of the business analyst to understand this. Business analyst is going to be working with the product owner or the product development manager, but I'm just going to say product owner, but you know what that could be. So business analyst will talk to the product owner and analyze and try to understand and break it down into small tasks. Okay. And when that is broken down into small tasks, the developer is going to start working on it. That particular small task, you need to understand what they're building.
Okay.
Because by understanding what they're building is how you're going to know that what you have to do to test it. That's what you have to do.
Okay.
So this document is not for you, but they're going to ask you in interview questions, then you need to tell them how, and this is how it looks like.
Okay.
If you open it and expand it, this is like 3.1.1.1. Right there. The system, they didn't have any more details in it, but it could have further information underneath that if they wanted to. That could help in design if available, but it's not there. Okay? So any questions about SRS, SRD, BRD, FRD, or whatnot?
No, not so far. I think we got a basic gist.
Okay. By the way, these documents are going to be stored in something called Confluence. And let me show you in real time. Let that log in, and I'll show you in a second. But let's move on to the next slide, and that will be ready shortly. Here's the requirement traceability matrix. That this is what you have to develop. Requirement traceability matrix. What that means is all those requirements that you've been working on, that you as a tester been thinking about writing test case on.
Okay.
You have to be able to put it and think it like, am I covering everything? Isn't it important for a tester to make sure that they are covering all the features that are here?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a feature, by the way. Locations, US, Texas. You have to make sure that you test that too.
Yeah.
You have to scroll down and make sure that these buttons work as well. These links work as well. Everything that you see, even these items and then this flag, all of that has to work. So the question comes, how am I going to know that I covered everything? Okay. How am I going to know which ones have been automated, which ones still needs to be automated? Shouldn't we have a place where we should put that and track it?
Yeah.
We need to do that, and that's what the requirement traceability matrix come in. How you want to design it is up to you. As a matter of fact, in our company, we don't have a good one. I don't do it either. I don't have time to spend time on that. I have a different system that works for me. I do that. I'll show you that later. But standard, if they ask you that question, you can tell them that you have developed an Excel sheet like this. Okay. And what did you put in? You see that BRD?
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
Business requirement document.
Correct. So from business requirement document, you got from that previous document that I just showed you. This could be that business document, requirement document. Okay. And you saw that there was something called a loan process. Right? So you're like, I need to then have a whole section for testing the loan process. So you came to your requirement traceability matrix and you wrote down from kind of copying from that document saying loan process. They had a number 1. You put it as number 1. Okay. They had a section for even under a number 1. They had a 1.1 section, which is new users. 1.1 or 2 existing users. Loan processing for 2 different types of users. You're like, okay, I'll break it down into 2. Then for new users, I have test cases. What are the test cases? See this TS? What do you think that stands for?
Yeah.
Test case.
Test. Yeah.
Test statement.
Test statement.
Sorry, test steps. It should be TC. Oh, right there. Test case.
Test case, okay.
So this could be just a different code, and I don't know how. This is a sample from some company taken. So they may have a naming convention for how they want to name that. Totally arbitrary. You can design it the way you want to. Whatever system works for you.
Got it.
So let's take a look at this test case here. This is not the whole test case steps. It's only the title of the test case. It says, validate the apply loan feature as a new user. And whoever wrote this test case gave it a test case number 1. Now, how are you going to validate? What are the actual steps? Like which page you have to go to, which button you have to press, and what do you have to test? All of that is written in a separate page. Separate location.
Okay.
Maybe in your notebook. You haven't even posted it yet anyway. You just took some scratched notes. But they're not going to write down. In a traceability matrix, you're not going to write down all the steps. You're just going to write down what are you going to test and what number you're going to give. Do you notice that there's 2 blank right here and 2 numbers, but no test case title written? That means it's still in the planning phase. Somebody is still thinking that there are 2 test cases additional on this loan feature with the new user.
Okay.
But they haven't written yet, but they're thinking that 2 of them are coming, so they gave them 2 numbers already. And we'll come back and write it later. This is your planning phase when the software development team is planning and designing things. You're writing traceability matrix, or at least you're formulating this test case title. Here is existing users, and you have test cases. You wrote down. Okay. This this blank is your reminder that there's more features there that I haven't written test case for. I need to come back.
So is this more so? This is more so for keeping. This is for yourself, right? You're keeping yourself accountable, not for other people to see or something. So you don't mess anything like your job.
Yes. Nobody outside your QA team is going to look at this. And,
okay.
But you may have this file in Google Doc, for example, and your team can have access to this file, and somebody, let's say you wrote this one, you're expecting your teammate to write these 2 because he was in that meeting. Suppose you're in a team who's working with loan process, so you wrote, you wrote these ones.
Okay.
Your teammate, he's on another team that's ease of use, working with those features, and your teammate is going in and writing these test cases. With me so far? So on that same document, all of you guys are writing it, and you're keeping a track of it.
Got it. Okay, understand.
Later on, you could say, hey, why don't we put a column in here to say whether it's automated or not? And you can put a column here saying automation, and you could put a check right here. Oh, yes, this is automated. Oh, no, this is still pending. This is pending. This one is automated. And an automation engineer will look at this and say, okay, I've done this one already. This is pending. Let me do this one. Or this one says in progress, meaning somebody's still working on it right now, so I'm going to not take that one. I'll take this one.
Good.
Any question about requirement traceability matrix?
So this is, extremely vital. You're going to be working with this. This is kind of sets your framework for what you're going to do, like today, tomorrow's, this project or whatever it is, this, with this team, where you're going to do this website. So this is pretty, you're going to be working with this and organizing everything all the time using RTM.
Correct.
Got it.
Some people don't do it at all. Some people just have it in their head.
Okay.
For example, my previous colleague, the woman who left us, I went in and I'm like, where are the test cases? Because they're asking me to test. She comes to my desk and she's like, can you test this for me? I'm like, so where are the test cases? No, you just test it. I'm like, I need to know the steps to test it. What do I need to validate? Because it's not as easy as, the Chili's site that I just showed you. This is easy. But
Okay.
there are websites, when web applications, they have data. How am I going to validate that? And there has to be a way. And some of those buttons, I don't even know what they do or what they're supposed to do. And she had nothing. I'm like, where is this stuff? They had nothing.
Yeah, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has been working there for 6 years and she knows how to test the website. I don't. How am I going to test with unlocking what you have in your brain? But anyway, I couldn't say that to her. So I was like, okay, I'm trying to figure out things, but I felt like I was silly. Maybe I was dumb. But later on, I realized that, no, I wasn't. It was probably her that she didn't do all this stuff. She didn't know how to. She didn't have a formal training on. She probably doesn't know what requirement traceability matrix is. You see what I mean? So she was brought in from the finance department that they needed a tester. The company was pretty small at the time, 6 years ago. And they were like, hey, would you like this job? And she took it. She doesn't have any technology experience at all. And then the whole testing field started with her only. And then the company started hiring more and more. Then the automation came, and then manual testers are being let go, kind of like that, So anyway, but if you can develop this, if you can keep track of this is where, if you want to be a test lead, if they are interviewing you for a test lead, they're going to ask you, how do you organize your test cases? Right? How do you make sure, the questions are going to be, how do you make sure that you have coverage? Mark this word. This word is used a lot. Coverage or test coverage.
Coverage?
Yes. Meaning covering all these functions. Do your tests cover all of these features? That's what it's talking about. Test coverage. They may ask you, what percent of test coverage do you have? That means, how out of all these features, how many are you covering? If you say 100%, that means all your test cases have been developed to test every single feature on this website. Okay? Look at this. There's so much information on this page. And you can go to each of these tabs, and there's so many buttons, so many things right here. Do you have written down all the test cases to cover all these features? That's your coverage. If they ask me how much coverage I have in my company, I would say maybe 60%. Because we're short steps and there's 40% more features that we don't even have test case for. And the fact that I don't have a requirement traceability matrix like this one, I don't even know which ones. Okay? I don't.
Okay.
I do have some things that I'll show you later, which gives me some insight, but this is a management. This is going to take time from you when you do this. But when you have the time, if you have the time and you do this, you can be a good QA manager. You can ask your team to write these things. You're just going to provide the framework and requirement. You're going to say, I need you to write the names of the test case like this, where you're going to say TC _ ease of use, which is the section name, and then put a 01. That's how I'm going to know which test case is what. You're going to tell your teammate that, hey, I want you to also write down the steps of every single test cases that you have here on another Excel sheet. So when you're off and you're sick, somebody else can pick up your test cases and test those. All of that comes, the management comes with requirement traceability matrix. Moving on. I have a video about what is a feature, app, and user stories. Basically, this document right here, these tabs are epics, features, and user stories. Okay, each of these statements is defined as one or the other. And you may hear these words. So this video is going to clear that up for you. So let's watch it.
Hello friends. If you want to know what is the difference between a feature, epic, and a user story, then you are watching the right video. In this video, I am going to explain you the difference between these three with a very good example. Now, say for example, there is a business need to develop a school management software. For this, there are mainly two very important stages. One is requirement phase. Another one is those requirements should be communicated with the development team. So generally, in these two phases, either a business analyst or a product owner will be involved. Now in this video, I'm going to explain you how this requirement will be communicated to the development team. Now, in this school management software, there will be many modules or features to be developed. Say, for example, like attendance feature, finance feature, transportation feature, inquiry feature, admission feature, and some more. Now, if we tell a development team to develop an attendance module or a feature, obviously we will not understand what to develop. So, it is very much important to break down these features into epics and further down to user stories. So only user stories will be understood by the development team. Now, I will show you how to break it down, taking one feature into an example. Now, in this slide, you can see that feature is being further broken down into epics, and those epics are further broken down into many user stories. Now, I'm going to explain you how to break it down, taking an example of attendance module. Now, in this slide, attendance module is a feature. And this feature is further broken down into epics. Now, as we know, in attendance module, there will be many sub-modules, like student attendance is a sub-module, faculty attendance will be a sub-module, and many other administration staff attendance will be another sub-module. Now, this sub-module, for example, student attendance sub-module will be further broken down into functionality stuff, that is functionality user stories. For example, in student attendance submodule, there will be many functionality. For example, adding student attendance is a functionality, updating student attendance is a functionality, downloading student attendance is a functionality. Now, each functionality will be user stories. So when we give this functionality to a developer, so it is very easy for them to develop. Now, same with another epic for the same attendance model, it is faculty attendance submodel. And for this submodel, there will be many functionality like attendance, faculty attendance is adding faculty attendance is a submodel, updating faculty attendance is a submodel, downloading faculty attendance is a submodel. So this each functionality will be a user story. Now, please like and subscribe this video. And in the further videos, in the next video, I'm going to explain you how.
Did that explain a bit?
Yeah, I understood. Did you get it?
All right. Let me go back to. Just a second.
Very good.
So if I were to ask you, going back, what is a broader topic of these requirements that are being listed in the SRS? Is it user story, epic, or feature?
Feature is the broadest,
Yeah,
and
feature is the
then,
broadest, then it goes to epic.
then epic, the user story, in descending order.
Correct. So user story is actually those broken down smaller steps that you saw in that other example right here. So these are
Okay.
your user stories. And an epic could be this sell configured to ordered products.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And there could
Got it.
be a feature which could be functionality, could be that feature, or usability
Okay.
is the feature.
Could be.
And then graphical user interface could be your epic, and then under the epic that could be broken down into smaller user stories. Okay, why is it
Got
called
it.
user stories? It's because it's written in a very user type of way. Notice it says the system shall allow a user. See that user? It's all about the user. What is the user able to
Okay.
do that we need to provide, that we need to build? That's why they decided to name it user story. It's like a story that they're gonna do or see or click on. And those are broken down in smaller steps, and they decided to name it user story. Who did it? Why? I don't know. But just know that those tiny requirements are called user stories, and you're gonna need this word a lot. You're gonna see this feature word a lot. You're gonna see this epic word a lot, and they're going to play into this course. And I'm gonna be using these words a lot. So, any questions before we move on?
No.
From
Pretty
now on,
straightforward.
great. From now on, those tiny requirements right here, I'm gonna start calling them user stories.
Got it.
All right. Unfortunately, SDLC, those steps, has different methodologies built into it as well. So I'm gonna have to teach you that too. Do you want to
Okay.
break before I proceed, or should I continue?
You want to take a break?
I'm cool with that.
We're okay, whatever. If you want to take a break, that's fine. If not, then we can keep going.
Yeah, let's take a 5 minutes break.
Sounds good. Yeah, we can take 5 minute break. Sounds good.
All right.
Okay. All right. We'll be back. So he would just wait for us there, and whenever he would see us, cut the corner, he would see us, he would look at us, and he would be like, he start freaking out, he would shake his butt, his tail going, but he would never lose us. But when we get close to him, then he'd be like, yeah, you guys are cool.
All right, ready to get started?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay. So let's take a look at this diagram. This will explain in the holistic way of how this work is happening. And there are some terms in here that you need to know by heart. You will be part of this team, this process, and they're going to ask you questions about this. Not just that,
Got it.
start working on it. You're going to be part of this process. And if you don't know words, you're probably going to be very lost in what to do and what's what. So let's start with this very first area right here. This is where the executive team, sometimes they're called the stakeholders. They can be customers, anybody who a product. That product information is going to go to a responsible person. You already know that. It's called product owner. Product owner is going to create a SRS or SRD. Y'all know that. You saw an example of that. You saw what a feature is. You saw what an epic is. And user stories. Any questions up until that point?
No.
Okay. All of those user stories are broken down into small chunks. They're still called user stories, okay? These number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are all user stories.
Okay.
We didn't write what it is, but they are now in a list, not in any particular order.
Okay.
That's called product backlog. Every one of these user stories, they look like a log, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
You know, like if you stack up a bunch of logs, they look like, so that's why we call it product backlog. This is where all the user stories lie. Now, how is it going to be pulled? That depends on a meeting called sprint planning meeting. Okay?
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I have to jump back and forth on this image because there is no way I could figure out how I could explain this better. But
that's fine.
Scrum team works chunks of weeks, is called sprint. Okay.
Okay.
And just the whatever the word stands for, you know, you're sprinting or you're in a quick mode of getting things done or going one place to the other. So these sprints are typically 2 weeks. They say you can do sprints of 1 to 4 weeks, but most people just do 2 weeks of sprint. And when interview asks you, how long is your sprint? You're going to say 2 weeks. What is that? What that is, instead of this whole product backlog that can take 6 months, your team is going to break it down into 2-week sprint. What can I accomplish within the next 2 weeks? And then what can we accomplish 2 weeks after? Those are called sprint. Each of those 2-week chunk is called one sprint or sprint 1. And then sprint 2 is another. Sprint 3 is another 2 weeks. Okay? Before you start a sprint, you have a meeting called sprint planning meeting. Okay? These meeting names are set in stone and will never change. And that's why they call it sprint rituals or sprint ceremonies. Every one of these meetings are part of the sprint ritual or sprint ceremony. And interviewer may ask you, what are the sprint ceremonies? describe them to me. Then you have to describe.
Okay.
What happens in these meetings is what I'm going to go over with you right now. This is your team right here. You got developers, you got QA, and you got business analysts. And your team is going to sit for a meeting called sprint planning meeting. Before you even start the sprint, it's only 1 hour, maybe 2 hours meeting. You are going to look at this product backlog. This is also in your computer. Okay. And
Okay.
this, to show you live, this is how it looks like. See, when I hover over this, it says backlog.
Yeah.
The who?
Okay. So this is real.
Uh-huh.
This is live. And if I click here, this is going to tell me, give me the list of all of these user stories. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Now notice two things. This one says backlog. Look at all these.
Mm-hmm.
And this one says sprint 76. And
Okay.
this says sprint 75.
Okay.
More of that I'll explain a little bit. So in sprint planning, what you're doing is you're looking at the product backlog and you are pulling stories and saying that, I think I can get these done in the next 2 weeks, or we think we should get these things done in the next 2 weeks. So those are the two questions that you're going to ask your developer, and BA is going to pull those stories into your sprint backlog.
Got it.
Then in real world, how does that look like? This is your product backlog right here.
Mm-hmm.
And after you had the meeting, you look at this. I can pull it. I shouldn't. I'll mess up the team. See that? See how I can move it?
Yeah.
That's what they do in that meeting. They pull this and say, okay, we want to take this to our sprint number 76, which is the next one. Actually, the next one is this one, sprint 75. And somebody's already pulling stories and designing this. And most likely it's the BA, business analyst, is pulling and saying, hey, I think grab this one and grab this one, and let's see if we can handle this. Now, in sprint planning meeting, you're sitting with the developer and the business analyst. You as a QA, you are just looking at these stories. Analyst queue improvement. What is LR data retention? And these are in very short what they have to do, what they have to build. And you are designing, what do you have to test? Okay. Now, so what's the difference between a sprint backlog versus a product backlog?
Oh, are you asking?
Mm-hmm.
So backlog is just going to be, it's the breakdown after you set out your SRS. When the product owner, they've already assessed what exactly is going to be done. And you have your SRS or SRD, whatever you want to call it, set up. You're going to create a backlog, which is like an itemized list almost of all the things that can get done, which, they already set up. And then the BA, like you're saying, is going to go and start divvying it up, how he thinks like these chunks should be done. And then they're going to be, these are what the sprints are. So whenever your team has your sprint set up, whether the BA is setting it up or you are setting it up while you're in a meeting with them, you are going to set it up. And while the developer and the BA is talking about implementing whatever it is, you yourself as the QA, you're setting up, okay, so now I know this is what's going to be done. I'm going to have to test, this product backlog, itemized, whatever, like say 1899, you know that from this, I got to test this of it. So they're talking about that. You're thinking about how you're going to set up your test, but each individualized sprint is like a little chunk of the big backlog that you're going to do in these 2 week intervals, like you were saying. And then I'm assuming like then you have a next sprint for the next 2 weeks and so forth.
Yes. So
Okay.
correct. All of these are going to be pulled from this main product backlog, and that's going to have all of the user stories there. They are not in any particular order or priority, but
Okay.
when you pull this, these tickets or user stories are pulled into sprint backlog. Sprint backlog user stories are A, they're prioritized, and B, they are placed there for a specific reason, because the BA and the developer thinks that these tickets go together or these developments go together. Okay. So,
Okay.
and not just that, they're also mapping out that, okay, we are able to do this within the next 2 weeks. And how are we going to do it? And they talk about it, and they put some sort of time frame on this, which is also I'm going to explain shortly. Any question so far?
No.
Okay.
No, not.
So now we have the sprint planning done, and we have come up with the sprint backlog. Here is the beginning of the sprint. So you got 2 weeks. You have to finish what you chose. Now you will notice that in the earlier example, I don't know if you can see this, but these tickets or these user stories have two things on them. One is who is going to be working on it. This one is McIntyre Watts, Nick Moorman. Some guys have their pictures too. Dan Christensen. This is my team, by the way. And you will see some numbers right here. This one is a 5, this one is a 3, this one is a 1. We'll talk about this number shortly. So we got these sprint backlog with people on it, and they're going to be working on it. They can decide which one they want to work on first, as long as they try to finish it. It's a 2-week thing. Within that 2 week, every day you have a meeting. Every day. Every day.
Okay.
For 10 to 15 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
And that meeting is called daily scrum meeting, or AKA stand up. Daily stand up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, this image did not have that. I need to add it. So just this word will come back up later on, so no worries. So daily scrum meeting is that daily stand-up meeting. Is only 10 to 15 minutes. And you're going to have to quickly, everybody will get a chance to say what you did yesterday. There's three things. One is what you did yesterday. What are you working on now? And are there any blockers? Or are you stuck? In other words, a fancy word, any impediments. Okay. So
Okay.
what have you done yesterday? What are you working on today? And are there any impediments? Those are the three things you have to say. A typical me as a QA, my response would be, hey, yesterday I started working on automation on navigating to certain page and then checking whether the customer information display or not. I'm halfway done. I will probably continue working on that today and do some more testing on some regression, and no blockers. That's it. And then I'm gonna move it to the next guy, and then it will be a developer. Developer will probably be like, hey, I'm working on this ticket right here, and this is I'm halfway there, or I'm done with this one. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So every day you got that. When you're almost done with it, you're going to have something called sprint review. Okay.
Okay.
Another meeting, it's once a week, just like sprint planning. Sorry, not once a week, once every 2 weeks or once a sprint. Sprint review is gonna be, hey, how you guys doing? Are you guys able to finish what we had, what we planned? Uh, did you finish already and you got nothing? Can I bring in a few more stories?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or, you took 5 stories, user stories that you wanted to work on, but you only finished 3. And we are almost nearly the end of the sprint. Are you going to be able to finish it? Or should we roll that work to next sprint? Those are the types of conversation that goes on in a sprint review. Okay.
Okay.
So it can also be instead of sprint review, they can call it sprint demo, meaning you're already done. Now the product owner comes in and you sit and you say, hey, we got this done. Here we go. And this is the web page that we did. You demo it to them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next, once you're done with the work, you finish it and you ship it out to the customer. You deploy the code. Customer gets it. They can see it. Sprint is done, but almost done because you have one last meeting to do. It's called sprint retrospective. Retrospective means just looking back and analyzing how we did. In this meeting, you're going to talk about what went well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 things you're going to talk about: what went well, what did not go well, and what can we do to improve in the next sprint.
Okay.
So the QA might say, I might say, well, I need to have more automation, or we didn't do regression testing as much. Maybe we need to do that. The developer might say that I was thinking that I could do 5 user stories, but I didn't plan it well. Maybe next time I need to pick like 3, or like my velocity is 3, and I can't do as fast or something, whatever. Or the communication was better. Everybody worked together. There was no bug found this sprint, and so forth. Or a bad thing could be, yeah, we didn't find bugs, but whatever the bugs we found, we didn't write the bug ticket on time, and that kind of slowed us down, and so forth. Any questions about sprint retrospective?
No.
Okay. Now, all of these user stories, as they're being finished, you got 14 days. Actually, work-wise, you got 10 days because Saturday, Sunday, you're closed. So within the 10 days, however many tickets there were, whoever finishes those tickets, system can map it to see how fast are we going down. How fast are our tickets or user stories are being complete. Okay?
Okay.
This graph is called a burn down chart. Let me see if I can show you a real one. See this report?
Yeah.
If I click here, it's not giving me, it's giving me a, okay, burn down chart. Oh, there you go. See that? This is what is expected if our work is finishing and following this line. We had this many 16 user stories. Notice. Let me zoom in a little bit more. But if I zoom in too much, you can't see.
Yeah, that's fine.
Here, if I hover over, it says 16 issues, sprint started, and if we were able to close it, notice this was closed.
Yeah.
This was done. This was done. Then nothing for one day. Then somebody added an extra story. Okay? And went up.
Uh-huh.
A project manager came and said, "Hey, can you do one more work for me?" And they had to add another user story there. Went up. Somebody finished it, went down. Somebody added again. They're not supposed to add it. That doesn't look good. And here's one finished. Here's another finished. Somebody added again. Nothing got done here. Done here. Somebody added a whole bunch here.
Oh, wow.
Those got done. Look at this. We're almost to the end point. We still have so many work.
Story.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere near done. But guess what? This last minute right here, whole bunch of people are gonna be like closing and saying, "We're done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done." It might end up right there, and it will be a nightmare for me, because whenever they close their user story saying they're done, my work begins because I have to test them.
That's stressful.
Now this is easy. I test one story. He's done here. I tested. He's done here. Done here. Whenever the graph goes down, it's done. I tested. But
Now,
here I
does
got-
that happen?
Yeah.
Does that happen more times than not? Like, say things like this, like you're supposed to get them done in a kind of orderly fashion, but then all of a sudden, nothing really happens for a week and a half, and then boom, you got like 15 things you got to test now.
Yep. Everybody's like that. Procrastinators. And they would wait till the last minute, and then now they know that sprint is closing August 18, and we gotta finish everything. So let's just, I don't know, get it done or whatever, half done and close it out. And now you got the QA. He's just spending half a day testing those stories. So that's what happens. This thing, these product sprint backlog, by the way, for you to look at these stories here, it doesn't tell you which one is done. I think you can
Okay.
kind of see they're crossed off though, but it doesn't give you good visual. So what they have, they call it a sprint board. This one. Same user stories. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Notice there is a to do, in progress, in QA, and then done.
Okay. I think you're talking to us about this in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To do's are nobody even touched it yet. These are 3 user stories, and look, we got one when they come back in Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday is the last day of the sprint. All of this has to be closed. But look at all this in progress and to do. By the way, this is my column right here in QA. Quality assurance. I have to test these user stories. And if only I can take this user story and move it to this done column.
Got it.
Okay. Developer can pull it from here. I think I have access to pull it anywhere, but they can pull it from in progress to in QA and to do to in progress. So I'll sign off on this. I got a whole bunch, so Monday is going to be a busy day for me. And then Tuesday, all of these guys are going to dump it on me, and it's going to be a busy day for me as well. Okay? Any questions about that?
No.
All right. Going back in here. What is a burn down chart?
Burn down chart is, it tells you, basically maps out like, okay, for this sprint, my team has allocated, say, 16 user stories that we're going to be working on.
Mhm.
And it chart shows you, like, say you can have a color coded grays, whites, blues, whatever. One color will show you that this is kind of like a projection of what should be done, so we can meet our goals. And then the actual line will be like, say, a different color, red, for example, you showed us. It'll be like, okay, we had 16 cases. If it's a flat line, that means nothing's been done at that time. And then if it goes down, that means, okay, we finished one case. Generally speaking, like you said, you don't want to add cases, but sometimes it happens. And then it kind of sees how you progress, so you can, keep track of, okay, are you close to meeting goals? Are you not close to meeting goals? How many cases are actually to do, to not to do?
Yeah.
It kind of lets you see that visually in a graph-like format, how much has been done, needs to be done, should have been done, and where bad days are, not good days are, and so forth.
So
Procrastination.
Is this a good burn down chart here?
No.
Good.
Yeah.
Burn down is supposed to burn it down and be finished with it. But notice this is burning up.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody is adding extra in the middle of the sprint, these stories should have been added at the beginning. But teams don't plan well. What it says is that there is a lack of planning. If they planned it very well, they could have just included these from way up here, then the graph would have looked nice. But instead of this actual graph line going down, it's going up. It's burning up. Okay, so you may hear the word burn down chart. You may hear the word burn up chart. It's the same.
Okay.
Just the same thing. And exactly how you describe it to the interviewer when they ask you.
Okay.
All right. Scrum Master is a person who can be anybody. It could be a business analyst. It could be a developer. It could be your project manager who can act as a Scrum Master who is going to oversee this whole thing. Make sure the sprint closes on time. Make sure there is a meeting scheduled. Typically, this is going to be the business analyst.
Okay.
They don't get any extra money for being a Scrum Master or anything. And really, nobody refers to anybody as Scrum Master, but some might try to take credit or feel good about themselves when they say, I'm the Scrum Master of my team.
Their own ego.
Yeah. just keeping the know-how of it. And if they ever ask you, who's your Scrum Master? Then you should say that we don't have a designated Scrum Master, but our business analyst acts as the Scrum Master. Okay? Sounds very well. The whole gist of the question was they wanted to see, do you get scared of this word Scrum Master, or you never heard of it? Or you deflected that and had a quick answer for it.
Got it.
Okay? So the answer, what you say in the answer doesn't really matter, but as long as you show that you know what that is, that's all that matters. Okay. That was a mouthful. Any questions on this process?
No, not necessarily. That's the one that I took the most notes on. Trying to just figure out, how everything ties back together. But I think I asked most of the stuff that I had questions on as we went. But yeah, I'm pretty good with that.
Okay. Next, we have these sprint ceremonies. I just wanted to touch base again. They will ask you.
Okay.
Sprint ceremonies. So I'll just quickly go over. You can read it later. Sprint planning is our first meeting. They will ask you, can you describe the sprint ceremonies? You're going to say yes. Our sprint starts with a sprint planning meeting. In this meeting, we look at the product backlog and we prioritize the user stories and decide which ones needs to be done and is able to be done within the 2-week sprint that we have. And then we have our daily meeting. What is the name of the other name of this meeting called?
Daily roundup? No. What was it?
Pretty close.
Hold on. Yeah. I did not write the die.
That's okay.
Something like yeah.
Loretta is home, so she's like she didn't log in. She's behind me. She's like, I know this. It's called daily stand up,
Daily stand up.
or
Okay.
just say stand up. If you just say I have a stand up right now, everybody knows what that means. All right, so they're just gonna say stand up. That means you have this daily Scrum meeting where you say what I did yesterday, what I'll do today, and are there any impediments?
Okay.
Then you got your sprint review where you can demo, which is presentation. You can get feedbacks, and or you can check to see if you're doing well, if you're going to reach the goal. What do you have to do to do, customize your user stories for the next sprint, and then retrospective, deciding on what went well and if improvements needed and what actions you need to take. Now, sometimes they have another meeting called backlog refinement meeting, or they may call it backlog grooming meeting. Grooming meaning, dog grooming, cut the hair.
Yeah.
So what they might do is this particular sprint, our team should do a grooming. Our team should say, look, we're not going to be able to make it. Then why don't we just cut off these user stories from our sprint? Because it doesn't look good. So there might be a meeting sitting with the developers and deciding, oh, well, let's throw this out. Let's put this on the next sprint. Or let's not do it this time. And they cut it out, cut the fat. And that's called backlog grooming meeting. But those are unofficial. So if they ask you for sprint ceremonies, if you can say this much, you're good to go. If you want to add more and say backlog refinement and explain that, you got some gravy points, bonus points. Questions?
No.
Moving on to the next. You saw Jira, yes?
Yes.
I just showed you my company. This is what if they ask you, how do you keep track of your backlog? What tool do you use? You're gonna say Jira, because 99% companies use this. Okay.
It keeps track of the backlog.
Okay.
You don't need any trainings on this. You don't have to do anything, but when the story is in a column, you test it and you move it to done. Got it?
Got it.
So I'm not going to spend time on training you on this. There's buttons, there's things you can do, search. There's a whole shebang of things on this, which
just
you need to
base,
learn.
right?
Yeah. If you want to get promotion, you get a job, and then you start practicing here, and what these tabs do, whatnot. That's going to be your continuous improvement. But when you go into an interview and you start working for somebody, don't let them know that you don't know this.
Okay.
You're going to secretly learn it yourself. Okay. There's a whole lot of things about this that I don't know yet. Okay. The other thing, the documentation, if they ask you, where do you keep your documents? You're going to say Confluence.
Confluence.
And let me take you there. This is Confluence. This is nothing but looks like a Google Drive. It acts like a Google Drive, but you can only access it through your company network.
Yeah.
Look at these folders here on the left side. These are folders, and you can go into files. Okay. And let me take you to some of the files that I have. Here's a bug ISC bug report. I created this one. I keep track of the bugs and the tickets I created. And look at all these files. I can click on it. It's going to take me there. There's more. So it's basically another form of Google Drive. That's all there is to it. I don't want to waste time training you here.
Okay.
And if they ask you where do you keep your documents and SRS, SRD,
In the Confluent.
feasibility matrix, test cases, whatnot, you're gonna say Confluence.
Got it.
We use Confluence to store all the data, to keep all the documents, to have all the instructions, work procedures, everything, the employee handbook, the employee benefits, you name it. The company is going to use this thing to store everything. Okay?
Got it.
So, what are the two tools that I mentioned?
So you've got Confluence, and then you've got Jira. Jira is keep track of the backlog, and Confluence is basically like your Google Drive of everything for your company as far as storage goes.
Yes, awesome. Okay. Moving on. Before I start this video, there's not much left. Maybe a few more minutes, and I'll be done.
That's fine.
Here, what was I? Not that. Okay. Let's go back to the backlog. Did you notice these numbers right here?
Yes, the 532s.
And this is sprint 75. If I go way down, this is just backlog. Nobody pulled anything yet.
Okay.
Nobody's images are on the right. Most of these don't have any numbers on them. Okay? These numbers are called story points. And these story points are basically you are putting an estimated number of how complex this is. You're not necessarily saying how long it's going to take you. That would have been much easier, to be honest with you. But I don't know why software industry, they put these numbers to describe how complex it is. And based on the complexity, they will decide how long it's going to take them, and nobody can say anything. Which is a good thing, actually, because you can take however long you want to. I mean, you can't be obnoxious, but just you can stretch it out quite a bit and get away with it. If this was how many days, if one stood for 1 day, two for 2 days, then people would be questioning you, hey, are you done now? It's been 2 days already. But they wanted to get away from that, and software developers are pretty smart, so they're like, we're just gonna come up with the system, and that way you can't blame us. And this video is about that. How do they assign this? So this guy is saying 1, that means it's very simple task. And this guy, McIntyre, for this particular story, user story, in short, I'm now gonna say story. Sometimes I'm gonna say ticket. Ticket and story is the same thing. I don't want to open the ticket yet, because that will be next week.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse you and overload you in information, but there is more information inside this story. So this 5 is like much more complex than the 1. So he could take 3 days, maybe 4, something like that, to work on that. Then what is it and how is it assigned? Let's take a look at this video.
Agile, it's critical for the team to plan their work so they can develop with quality and predictability. Story points are the preferred unit for sizing work for Agile teams. This practice helps teams get to good enough information while avoiding false precision. Unlike a specific measurement of time, such as an hour or a developer day, story points are abstract. They represent relative whole team effort, but keep time out of it. Lots of things affect how long something takes, including interruptions and work in process. It is useful to assess effort separately from these other influences on duration. When Agile teams size stories and points, they leverage the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, etc., to avoid false precision. This approach helps us remember that small differences are never as important as we think they might be. It's the larger differences and the relative sizing between stories that help us figure out how to put them together in a collection and estimate our time over long periods. For example, if you're making a fruit salad, you need 5 apples. It's not important how big the apples are, but how big they are in relation to the other fruit in the salad. I know that 5 apples are roughly the same as 5 pears or 20 strawberries. So the relative size is more important than the individual size. Story points help with mid-range and long-range planning. It's not about focusing on what will happen this afternoon, but instead on what may happen further down the road. There is some uncertainty about what will happen between now and when the user story is implemented. We may learn new things, new technologies might be introduced, or the customer may decide they want something different. Reminding ourselves that there is some uncertainty is important, especially for things that don't need to be exactly the same size. Going back to our fruit, if I want an orange to eat, that orange may be a different size depending on the time of year, the type of orange. What's important is that I'm getting one orange. It's not important that I get 8.52 centimeters of orange. In fact, I'm almost certainly setting myself up for failure if that's what I write down on my grocery list. Story points also prevent premature commitments that are sometimes forced from outside sources. For example, a project manager may ask how long the project is going to take. If you say the size of it is a day, then she'll likely be back the next day asking why it's not done. Story points help us keep our sizing abstract since they're only important within the context of a container or iteration. An individual story point isn't very meaningful. Rather, it's the collection of story points within a time box that are significant. So story points are useful for longer-term planning when it isn't necessary or even beneficial to get too granular into the details and to help you avoid wasting time, resources, or expectations on the unknown. Instead, leverage points to get to a good enough prediction of the future plan and set yourself up for smarter trade-off decisions when things change later.
Questions on that?
No, she did pretty good. The analogies were pretty helpful.
So in a nutshell, you can't come back on the developer and saying, hey, you put 2 points, that means you should have been done in 2 days, and why not? But if you really have to kind of understand what it could come up with, then here's a chart for you. But again, points does not equal to a day or an hour or 6 hours. It's just a rough estimate. So a 1-pointer could be 6 hours to a day, maybe less than 6 hours. Okay. 2 points, roughly maybe 12 hours. It could bleed into 1.5 day, something like that. 3 points, 3 days, and so forth. Again, this doesn't really say anything, set anything, and nobody can get on the developer saying that, hey, you said 3 points and you should have been done already in 3 days. Nah, I don't know what else to say.
Okay.
It's just to me, it's just a way for the developers to get away from timeline and
It's saving them, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I have terrible opinion about this, but don't get me started. Yeah, I mean you're supposed to use this. If you go in a big company and you have 5 test cases to automate, you're actually gonna give points on those automation. So it actually helps you too. You can put 5 points on one of the automation you're going to do, and you could be working on that automation for the whole week. And nobody's going to say anything. Okay? So, where did these numbers come from? 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13. This comes from nature. It's the double of things. If we take 1 and plus 1 becomes 2. If we take 2 plus 1, 3. And kind of adding back to it. So 3 plus 5, 8. Not necessarily double, but it's just you're adding back to it. And that's how relatively these shells are designed. So just to put it out there. Here's a Kanban board. Okay, you saw a Scrum board, Sprint, and then what's Kanban?
Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Amy.
My friend Betty keeps talking about Kanban and how it made her business more efficient and improved collaboration. Do you know what she's talking about?
Yes, Kanban is a simple but powerful tool that can help business owners and project managers stay organized. Meet me in the conference room and I'll explain it. Kanban is a Japanese term meaning something like billboard. It was developed by Toyota in the 1950s for manufacturing. However, it has since been applied to a number of industries, including construction, architecture, software development, and even personal time management. A well-planned Kanban board keeps all of your team members collaborating and informed. In many cases, a digital Kanban system, along with thoughtful participation, can eliminate the need for the dreaded weekly status report. In its most basic form, a Kanban board has just a few columns such as to do, in progress, and completed. With digital systems, like stars, any number of columns can be created to reflect how work flows through your organization. After a board is created, all the necessary contributors are invited to participate on the board. This creates a small but dynamic working group. Depending on the nature of your business, you might invite an engineer, a graphic artist, a copywriter, and a few others. In most cases, the board participation list will include at least one or more product owners. In a small company, the product owner might be the business owner. In a large organization, it might be a project manager. Generally, it is the role of the product owner to maintain an authoritative list of work items that need to be accomplished in order to complete a project. In a Kanban system, these work items are represented on the board with tasks or cards. They are also sometimes called user stories because they describe work in sequential, bite-sized thoughts. In order to help the product owner stay organized, a typical Kanban board often contains a backlog. The backlog is a sorted and prioritized list of tasks that aren't yet ready to be worked. The backlog can even contain brainstorming cards. As work becomes ready for the team, the product owner moves the task from the backlog to the to-do column. In a digital system, like STARS, a variety of notifications can be set to inform participants when such changes occur. Once a card is moved to the to-do column, it is ready to be worked by the team. Some systems, like STARS, even allow cards to be assigned specific ownership. In a Kanban system, the topmost card is the most important. As a result, there is no confusion as to which task needs to be worked next. As work begins, the card is pulled out of the to-do column and placed into the in-progress column. During its journey through the board, participants can add notes, change ownership, and even invite others to participate. This lets everyone on the board know exactly what's going on at any given time. One by one, cards move from the backlog onto the board. Team members continue to pull cards from one column to the next as items are worked. When the backlog becomes empty and all the cards are in the completed column, the project is done. I suggest we visit STAR's website
and see how their digital Kanban system can improve our business.
Any questions, guys?
No.
Some companies don't use Jira and they have a board like this literally in their workroom. And they,
Physical.
yeah, like a whiteboard. And they would take a tile, magnetic tile, and write down what their task is. And they're going to stick it here in the to-do or in the progress. And they can keep moving it. And they will probably have a stand-up, daily stand-up. And in that daily stand-up, they're going to look at their ticket. Either they're going to move it or they're going to say what they did or they're working on it and in progress, or are there any blockers? So similar to Scrum, not under pressure. Kanban is laid back. Okay?
Got it.
One last video. I'm not going to go there. I think I gave you enough information on Scrum and Kanban. This is versus and stuff. I don't think I have anything else. Let me see. That's the last one. Any overall questions on anything that I missed?
No, we're good.
Okay, awesome. No homework for this week. Just you guys, if you want to revisit those two presentations, you're going to find it in the site. So far,
Okay.
these two. So watch that. This is still under construction. So I'll have this ready for you next week, but the videos are still there. Some of these are repeat, like this SDLC organizational structure, but instead of showing videos, I did a smaller presentation. So I'm not gonna give you these videos. I'll probably take them off from there. But this is gonna be test development and planning and how do you write these test cases? What is bug life cycle? Some real world bugs. I have some animations for you to see actual bugs and some GIF files that you can also see. So you will see that. What are some tools we use to store our test cases? So by the end of next session, you should be very good as a QA analyst. That's it.
Okay.
I mean, you can start working as a QA analyst after the next weekend. I don't know if I'm going to have anything else on this. If not, we're going to jump into the test automation engineering, and we're going to start with the technical stuff of building a website first, and then work our way through all of these topics here. Let's start the class at 9 o'clock next weekend, and if I can finish it by 1, then we're good. If not, maybe we'll take a lunch break and come back.
Okay, that's fine.
But hopefully starting at 9 o'clock, I think we can be able to finish much faster. Cool.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, folks. Thanks for attending. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that was the next
for the weekend.
Okay.
All right, bye.